The absolute worst kind of disputes that I see are not murder, rape, or any anything as grave as you might imagine. But the most emotionally disturbing disputes that I always see are those which happen between family members. Because every other time, at least in my personal experience, of course I've not done cases like terrorism or something very very heinous, but the usual slew of cases that I've seen, hundreds of them on a regular basis, the most disturbing ones are the ones which happen between family members. And the reason why I say this is because, of course, the criminal justice system of this country, the way it is panned out, it is very, very difficult for you to, get out of the situation if someone who is smart is able to exploit the system to their benefit. And then when one side of the family uses those exploitative techniques to maybe implicate you falsely in crimes, or file civil disputes for injunctions, for possession, for declaration, and you're running around from court to court, those are the situations where I have seen the maximum damage happen to a person's psyche. Because even if you're facing, say, a criminal case or civil disputes or any sort of disputes under any of the laws with anybody else outside your house, it is, you still come back home and you are able to kind of have a sense of security in your own house, and you know that at least your family is there behind you, helping you out and supporting you. But when I see family disputes, they're the absolute worst kind. Various family members will invoke the law against each other, living sometimes in the same house, living sometimes in different houses. But the worst part is that everyone gets to know those relations are never the same. And of course, lawyers, who hover around the situation like vultures, are always there to grab as much of the pie as is possible. Two recent examples come to my mind. A client came to me, told me that his sisters filed a civil suit for injunction against him in the morning, and then after that tried to break locks of his property, regarding which a civil suit was filed in the morning, in the evening. When someone called him and told him this, so he went to fight them, they called up the police and told the police that my brother and another of another relative on the brother side, this other man, both tore off the clothes of the sisters and outraged their modesty by groping on their bosom. And after that, the client's wife also got into an altercation with the client's sister's husband, and then thereafter leveled the allegation that the client's sister's husband had torn her clothes and then outraged her modesty by molesting her and by grabbing at her bosom. And after all of this, we applied for anticipatory bail for one of the client's relatives. We got that anticipatory bail. We were about to apply for anticipatory bail for the client himself in the High Court when the client calls us after about a month and a half of disputes. And mind you, the months of November and December 2020 were almost exclusively devoted to fighting out this client's disputes in various courts of law. Complete nightmare. Yet, around the second week of January, I get a call and they say that we are trying to now settle the matter upon the interference of other family members. And the reason why I say it's the most tragic is what happened very, very recently, just about 2, 3 days ago. The client calls and tells me that one of those two sisters who had falsely alleged that he had outraged their modesty, that all these property disputes, we filed written statements to their civil suits for injunction. One of those sisters passed away because of a minor heart attack. And this man, who held so much contempt for these sisters just 2 months back and was ready to fight tooth and nail, now tells me that he is very glad that just 4 or 5 days before she passed away, he was finally able to reconcile with her. They were able to enter into a compromise with which even the sister was happy. And it is after that that she suffered this heart attack and she passed away. And the worst part about the whole thing is that I told my client that the perennial pessimist in me, which frankly is my job, the perennial pessimist in me is apprehensive that the other side could perhaps, by spinning the story of the heart attack into some other thing, maybe into like a criminal conspiracy for abetment of suicide or straight up murder, might try to pin this on my client. And so I told my client to be apprehensive and to be 100% certain that during these negotiation talks, the other side, the other sister, does not level an accusation of murder or abetment of suicide of the sister who just passed away. Another example that comes to my mind is this client came a couple of months ago, told me that he got into a fight with his relatives who came inside his house, and to a great extent where he was at fault, they came to the house, they knocked him up a couple of times, they you know, in an effort to set him straight, the tough love. And he tells me that he wants to avail of his remedies against them. So I tell him, they did beat you up, so you can go and go to the court. You can go to the police, you can file your complaint. If the police don't entertain it, we approach the courts of law, we also file a civil suit for damages. We do avail for you all the remedies which are available to you in law. But I warned him and I told him that if you do this, you will strain relations with your entire family. At that point of time, very angry at the whole situation with what everything, how everything panned out, he told me he still wants to proceed. Now he tells me that his entire family has alienated him. They do not wish to talk to him. They're extremely hostile towards him. Nobody in the family even gives him food. To which I have no other response but to tell him, I told you so, because this is exactly what I had told him at day one is going to happen. If you go and strike at the hand that feeds you, do you expect that hand to keep feeding you still? The solution that I had offered him at that point of time was for him to move out of that house where other family members also live, and then to initiate these cases if he is so bold and wants justice so badly. He chose to stay inside that house and then level allegations against family members who are direct family members of people living in the same house. And of course, consequences naturally had to follow. Now he is stuck fighting his entire family, not just legally, but also psychologically and emotionally. And again, I do not see any way to come out of the situation for him except to forgive and perhaps try to forget. And this is the reason why I say that on a lot of occasions, perhaps if you're not 100% certain that you want to go with it really, really badly, perhaps it makes sense to forgive, reconcile, and try to move on. Even if you perhaps lose a little money, you will save yourself family bonds which otherwise should ideally be lasting you a lifetime. I think the same advice also applies for matrimonial discords, and that is why a lot of times when husbands come and ask me about their situation, they want to understand what all they can do. One of the first few questions that I always ask is, are you 100% absolutely sure that this marriage cannot continue no matter what? And if only I get a response that yes, there is no certainty on when the husband comes or the wife comes, then I tell them that these are the legal remedies that you can avail of yourself, and you can proceed against them in courts of law and with other authorities. If you can, try to reconcile. If you can, try to move on, try to forgive, try to be there for your family rather than fighting out these cases. And if you do choose to avail of justice and avail of your legal remedies, so be it. But remember that there will definitely be consequences as well.